Greetings, my friends. Welcome back. We're going to look into game number 11 in between Gukesh Dommaraju and Ding Liren. Is this the turning point of the tournament? We'll see. Now, currently, after game 11, uh, Gukesh is leading with 6 to 5. And we know that the condition to be winning the World Chess Championship 2024 is the first player to score 7.5. So, three more classical games to be played in between the Ding Liren, the current World Chess champion, and the challenger Gukesh. This one was a Reti opening. It seems to be the weapon of choice now for both players. Gukesh with whites and Ding with black. It seems to me yet again that the psychological character of chess actually decides on many critical moments. So let's go on with the move now. So we played the Reti, we said c4, the advanced variation in which you're not trading, you're not reinforcing the pawn on d5, you go forward claiming space and not allowing the knight to play c3, and you're ready to play c5 and stuff. So you're denying the natural developing square. Coffee break. Let's hope it's not happening too often. So b4 now, expanding very nicely, taking a bunch of space, maybe clearing the way for the bishop to do something on the b to a3, depends. c5 now, challenging the b4, reinforcing the center a bit more. And e3, the dismantling of the black pawns here, and opening up of the bishop to get into play. If you now say, yeah, but what if the guy pushes the pawn onto d3? That's a blunder. That's not very good because if black decides to go for this, for instance, you could just very well take, and you took a pawn for free here. Black has to develop, whatever. They chose to play, and then queen to b3, and this guy is gone, and black is doing very bad. So you mustn't do this because black is just simply losing. So don't do that stuff. Don't push the pawn. Play like Ding if you want. Knight f6 is absolutely fine, not a problem. a3 now. Natural replacer for a b4 white pawn. If black takes, you're going to take back. Pin. Always good to make a pin. Bishop g4. Knight can't move. Deciding now to take. Clarifying in the center a bit. And h3. Putting the question to the bishop. What are you going to do with this guy? And Ding Liren, oops, mouse slip. Didn't take on h3, fellas. That's a mouse slip, man. So two good things you could do here if you're playing with the blacks. You either could take, as Ding did, but that comes at a cost, or you very elegantly go to h5. That's also a very good choice. You go h5, and if white pursues a bit more, you're going to drop onto g6, and obviously white's going to play bishop g2, aiming for this one long term. So that might be a weakness black has to be aware of. Anyway, he didn't play, Ding Liren didn't play bishop h5, he took on f3. Queen takes on f3, and there is a bit of a weakness for black, but it's not indefensible, as we will see. Queen c7 now provides defense and further developing stuff of the back rank. d3 now, making sure this guy is not going to move away. Stays there, the pawn, and also opening up the bishop's diagonal, so that's important. It is always a multi-purpose, especially at the highest level of chess that we all so much admire studying. There is always more than one consequence to every single stuff you do. And the more the more complex the game gets, the more stuff is going to happen with every single move you take. So d3 now, obviously fixing that, stopping that black pawn, but also very importantly freeing up the c1 bishop. a5 to dismantle this white's pawn here. If you ignore it, you can't just ignore it, but if you ignore it, that they might take, and you can't really take, because the rook takes your rook, the black rook on a8 will take the white rook, so you need to be careful about that one. So he expands nicely. Nice pawn structure here. Look at this tremendous space being taken by Gukesh, taking the c6 from the knight, so you can't get the knight on a nice square that you might have wanted to. No longer possible, so you got to choose alternative routes. So knight b8 to d7, right? If you can't go c6, which would be probably better, you go d7. And g3. g3 being played here by Gukesh. I think it's obvious for all my friends there. It's the bishop g2. That's the stuff you want to do. Better that bishop e2 is not that great. You want to go bishop g2 because actually, if you remember, guys, we discussed about the b7, which is that weakness you want to pinpoint and keep the pressure for the b7 square. Nice c5, further developing, and a bit of pressure here onto d3. Just to keep this in mind. So nice c5, presses the d3. Knight now, he plays knight f6 over to d7, and we got to explain why, because he wants to mount more counter hits on the d3. He wants to get more power to attacking. Castle short. Now we can say that actually white had castled the king. So psychologically, you don't need to deal with the king's safety now, whereas black still has to decide and choose the proper tempi to getting this guy out in the game and castle. So now plays knight to e5. That means a couple of things. Queen being hit, first and foremost. And d3 now, double pressure. Now, he may look a little bit scary having that black knight pair right in the center. But actually, it's very playable here for white. But you got to do precise things, which he did. It's queen to f4. It's not a bad stuff. Rook now plays to d8 to defending this guy because queen to f4 also attacks the e5. Now, if you may inquire, wait a minute, but can they take on d3? Well, no, they can't take with this knight because queen is hanging and white could just take. So you can't use this knight. So that's a pin. And if you say, well, can't I maybe use the other knight? Yeah, you kind of can. But then we're going into queen to e4, which is nice and safe. For instance, just giving an example. So how you're going to playing this. And that's not just this. There's more to this. There is also f4 that might be hitting the knight on e5. And if this guy moves, there is no more defense for this guy. All right? And I mean, now just playing something hypothetical that didn't happen. And of course, now black needs to decide, maybe taking this guy. Anyway, it's white's turn, and now you go for this. Rook's going to have to take, and knight is hanging. You got to play something with this knight. You're going to go d7, and actually it's looking very good for white. I don't know if you like it, but I don't like it here for black, and probably you guys don't like it either. So it looks a little bit scary, but it's very playable. Again, either of the two black knights taken on d3 is now working. Rook d8. A little bit of defense over to that pawn. The loner. And rook d, played by Gukesh. g6. Now, Ding decides to get a bishop in action. You guys know how important that is, developing your pieces, and he still needs to develop the bishop on f8 and also to secure the king somehow. So a4. Can I take another coffee break? Machu Picchu number 4, nice one. That's what I'm drinking. So h5. Oh, yeah. Just not to forget, the h5 being played here by Ding actually wants to do, of course, a couple of things. But one that springs to mind and we got to pay attention to is actually this idea, because the rook is here supporting the bishop to hit the queen eventually. b6, that's a very nice idea. The idea is simply to deflect the queen away from defending the knight. So if black queen takes on b6, the knight on e5 is goodbye. So you can't take on b6. So queen d6 now, moving to safety, but still providing defense for the knight. Also placing the queen into rook's protection in case that this guy decides to go somewhere. The knight suddenly decides to move. Your queen is safe now. You're no longer pinned. And now Gukesh mounts more pressure. This is a pin piece. So now the knight on c5 is pinned by the bishop. Excellent play by Gukesh. Well, There's no wonder he's the challenger of the world chess champion. So these guys are incredibly strong. Bishop h6 now, hitting the queen. As we said, rook defends the bishop attacks the white queen. Bishop takes on c5, queen takes. Queen to e4, going for the b7. That's a weakness. That's been a weakness pretty much like forever in this game, if I may say that. Knight c5 being moved now to cut off the queen from attacking b7. Knight to a3. Knight to a3 has beautiful outposts. I mean, just look at this kind of stuff. You can always go here. I think that probably might be the most ideal outpost. So let's take it step by step. Rook now playing to d7. Again, maybe looking for this guy in case you want to play the black knight somewhere. And yeah, maybe you want to play e5 at some point. So I think that makes sense. Knight now on c2. Knight on c2, increasing the pressure on this pawn. Pawn to d4. Like how many times? 2 times attacking this pawn here, which you can't take it now because black defends it successfully, like 3 times. Queen takes on b6. And rook a b1. Natural stuff now. Going for the queen, attacking b7 in this fashion, vertically with a rook. And also you've got this. I think this is very strong. Now white is starting to doing a little bit better now because of, amongst others, because of this idea also. Queen to c7. Rook to b5. Very nicely. Rook to b5. Also, you claiming the 5th rank here. Maybe you're going to do a battery, which is absolutely killing over battery. Castles, finally, Ding castle, king safety now has been achieved. There is a bit of an advantage from a positional point of view here for white because of the enormous pressure that's gonna happen on the b file. Now a backward move with the knight over to a1, and you may wonder why. It's because Gukesh wants to put that knight to a better square. And knight on c2, well, you can't move here, you can't get there, right? And you go here, maybe yes, maybe not. There is always a bishop here. So he actually decided to find a different way to positioning the knight via a1, b3, c5. Very nice, very nice. Knight a1, rook to b8 now, defending here. So something's going to happen sooner or later. So now Ding just decides to go and help. Very equalish. Knight to b3, obviously announcing c5. And now we're coming to the hot point of the game, the moment in which psychologically Ding Liren, probably due to stress, fatigue, many other things, psychologically he chose badly. The blunder, e6, and from a human point of view, we can understand e6 wants to allow the black rook after knight c5 being played by white, wants to allow something like rook e7, but it's a miscalculation because of the enormous pressure that amounts with the doubling of the rooks, and knight c5 and b7 and knight can be captured, which it was. Way better simple ways to tackle this. The engine would tell you so. Just check yourselves and look at the other comments. Rook to d6, knight to a7. Very good stuff to play here with the black pieces, and the game is very much playable. So knight a7, rook d6. Rook d6 if you play now in anticipation of knight c5, like prophylactically. After knight c5, you may just go rook f7 if you choose so. You may play knight a7. The game simply continues. And now e6, the blunder, played by Ding Liren. How much time did he spend here? Let me just see. He didn't spend too much time, so he thought actually that works, but it doesn't. All of a sudden, rook goes to e7 and is going down immediately. Of course, Gukesh could have taken on b7 straight away, but he doubles. He wants to make sure he got all the full power of the 2 rooks lined up on the b file, and this is completely undefensible at this stage. It's completely undefensible. And after this blunder, he does another blunder. After e6, he does another blunder, queen to c8. Everything now is collapsing. and queen takes c5, c6, apologies. There ain't no good moves now. A piece had been captured. There is absolutely no good moves. If queen takes, the white queen, bishop takes back, and if you capture, then I'll just simply win. It's huge disproportional from a material point of view. Huge disproportion. White is winning at this stage. And if you say, yeah, but can I take maybe with a pawn? Yeah, you can, but then I'm going to take rook on b8, and the queen is pinned. Yeah, you may drop the other rook, or you may, it just doesn't mean a bit of a difference. It doesn't mean nothing. Look at the material, and obviously at this high level, you just resign. That was it, my dear friends. Move number 26, a blunder played by Ding Liren. So yeah, rook d6, knight a7, better choices here. The game continues. e6, and all of a sudden, rook has to move, inboxing itself, becoming incredibly idle. But that's not going to save the b7. That's not going to save the knight. That's not going to save the b7. There is just nothing. It's worth mentioning, though, that this move, rook to b1, allows actually black to cut off the white rook battery. Now, Gukesh should have gone immediately with knight takes b7. Again, I think the stress plays a huge role here. When he plays rook d to b1, allows black to cut off the two rooks with the knight b4. So again, it's playable now. It is playable with knight to b4. There is no rook's taken on b7. That's very defensible. Black enjoys triple defense on the b7. So that would have been also a better choice for black. Queen c8, another blunder. So queen c8, another blunder. Yeah. All right, guys. So that was game number 11. Probably a turning point in the World Chess Championship. Thanks for watching this film. Share it with family, friends. That's perfectly fine. Join my live streams and let's do a couple of game analysis, puzzles, maybe rapids together, blitzes or so. Thank you and see you soon.